So what should immigration reform look like for such a divided America? Well, joining me to discuss this is John Wahala from the Center for Immigration Studies and activist Ron Gochez from our LA studio. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here, both of you. Ron, I'm going to start with you because in today's speech, Barack Obama really put a lot of the blame on some of the Republican leadership. He attacked them along partisan lines, but did he say enough to convince the immigrant community that he's actually working on this, that he's serious about having reform happen soon?
Well, I think it's small talk, because what we see that, the Democratic Party is saying now that they need the Republican vote. But in reality, the Democrats had a supermajority already, and they could have passed immigration reform before. So now they're using this as the hot potato to really attack the Republicans and really try to get the Latino vote once again. But we're not falling for those politics. We're saying that we need immigration reform now, and we're pushing for Obama to do it. I mean, we know that Obama right now could stop the raids. He could stop the deportations with a simple executive order, and that's what we're pushing for immediate action on this issue.
Now, how do you feel about that, John? Because, in a lot of ways, like I said, he's throwing this all at the Republicans, saying that they're the ones that are stalling all the action, and it's their fault.
Yes, I agree. The speech had very little detail. There was no announcement of a forthcoming bill. And interestingly enough, he said they needed bipartisan support to get this thing through, which, if you remember the health care, they didn't do bipartisan support, and they were able to get that through. The Obama administration, since they've been in, have said this has been a priority, but they pushed it back.
But do you blame him, or do we blame people like John McCain, for example, that lives in a state or represents the state of Arizona, and when it turns out, when you poll the majority of Americans, the majority of them support Arizona's immigration law. So, I mean, aren't then these lawmakers just representing the interests of the people from their state, their constituencies?
I think that's how democracy is supposed to work, and I think that's right now what's happening. The administration is tentative. They know that it's very unpopular, and the president today said he needed to put politics aside to get this through, and the reason is because when polled, a very large majority of the American people see through the rhetoric of open-ended immigration with little promise of enforcement.
Now, Ron, tell me this, because today Barack Obama also is saying that his plan, perhaps, in order to get people on the pathway to citizenship is to have them pay a fine, to have them pay taxes, register, wait in line. Do you think that that would actually work with this population? I mean, how big of a fine are we talking about? If it's cheaper, are more immigrants going to want to come over? If it's too expensive, is everyone going to ignore it? And, a line, there's already a lot of people waiting in line to become American citizens.
Well, when you look at the economics of the immigrant community and what we contribute to this economy, the billions of dollars on an annual basis that are generated because of our labor, it's something that, I don't agree that we should pay anything at all. But if they wanted to have a fine what's $500, $1,000, our community would do whatever it takes legally to become citizens in this country and to continue working and doing all the hard jobs that regular Americans simply will not do. So this is something that we're pushing for. It's not an issue of sure we'll pay for it or not. It's a human rights crisis. Our people are dying at the border. People are terrified every single day in our communities. This is something that has to happen now. And it's not, the pressure's on the Democratic Party just as much as it is on the Republican Party.
Now, John, do you think these people should have to pay a fine, that they should have to wait in line, or, what about amnesty?
I think that all this talk of the fines and things like that are kind of a gimmick. In 1986, we had IRCA, which amnestied about 2.7 to 2.9 million Mexican illegals. And they said for the first time in our history, it would be illegal for an illegal immigrant to work in America. That was never enforced. Again, it's impractical, as the president said today, to deport 11 million people en masse. Nobody's denying that. But it's also impractical to believe that you can vet all these people that are illegal in the country, that are in the queue, efficiently while enforcing the border.
Well,
it simply can't happen.
What do you think should happen?
We believe in an attrition through enforcement policy, which is fairly and humanely enforce the law where we can on the border, but predicated on worksite enforcement. We have E-Verify right now in place. Make that uniform. Make it harder for illegal immigrants to work, to conduct their business here, and what will happen is a slow churn and attrition of the illegal immigrant population. And in the last years of the Bush administration, we actually began to see that when they got a little bit serious about enforcing the law the last 2 years they were in.
Now, Ron, what do you say? Barack Obama today essentially kind of beat his chest and said that they've accomplished a lot because the borders are more secure than they have been in recent years, that there are more boots on the ground than there have been in recent years also. But at the same time, he went back and said that's not necessarily going to solve the problem. So, I mean, what are your thoughts in terms of border security, in terms of shutting it down?
Well, we know that's absolutely false. The policy at the border is a complete and utter failure. Not only do you have more drugs coming across that border, there's more people coming across the border as well. So really what's happening is that they're continue to oppress our communities at the border. More people are dying. Now there's more than 6,000 people who have died at the border. So the policy is a complete and utter failure. Whether it's been the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, it's failed. So we're saying that this policy has to change now, and we have to have a pathway so that people can be citizens in this country so they can continue to work and do so legally. And we know that this is something that's historic. And when we talk about immigration, if they want to talk about kicking out the illegal people, as John just spoken, are we going to start with the Europeans? I mean, the day when Border Patrol and ICE agents ask white people on the streets every single day for their green card, that'll be the day that I'll accept our community being asked for the same.
Now, what do you say to that, John? I mean, should ICE agents asking everyday people on the border for their green cards? For example, actually, you guys, I want to play a clip that we have of Obama today when he was talking about, this is in terms of Arizona's laws. I mean, Americans right now, they want more Border Patrol agents. They want more boots on the ground. They want more laws like Arizona has. But guess what? That costs money. So let's hear that.
This administration will not just... Laws like Arizona's put huge pressures on local law enforcement to enforce rules that ultimately are unenforceable.
Yeah. All right, so what do we say to that? I mean, that costs money.
It does cost money, but the irony is that the Arizona law is simply a complement of federal law. It reinstates federal law at the state level. So you had the president...
what federal law? Because most people would say that Arizona's law does not comply by any federal law, and quite the opposite, is actually unconstitutional.
Well, it was drafted by lawyers who worked in the executive. They know immigration law intimately, and all it does is say that police officers in their normal course of duty can check people if they have a reasonable suspicion that are illegal. Basically, the bottom line is they ask for a driver's license. If that person produces it, then end of story. And that's no more than federal law does, immigration law.
Ron, do you agree with that? Do you think the Arizona law is constitutional and just applies with federal law?
Look, any high school student in a U.S. government class can tell you easily that it is absolutely unconstitutional. When you have people who are going to be harassed on a daily basis simply because of the color of their skin, that is unconstitutional. I can guarantee you that a white Caucasian male driving a BMW with blonde hair and blue eyes is not going to be stopped like someone who looks like my mother. I can guarantee you that. So we absolutely agree that that is unconstitutional.
Now, let's talk about also how this immigration, this issue really is dividing this country, because we have a lot of people that are upset that if they go into a Latino community, these people, they don't want to learn English. They feel like they're driving into Little Mexico. And is that necessarily right? I mean, shouldn't you be forced to learn the language and in some ways to assimilate into the country in which you're living?
I mean, right now...
Well, I would say that, the Americanization schools in this country closed a long time ago, and we have to understand that this is something that's a historical context. These lands belong to the indigenous people, and we've been here for thousands of years. So our culture is something that is not going to be erased. And when people say, well, you just have to assimilate, that's saying that you have to get rid of your culture, your language, your customs, and that's something that we absolutely refuse to do. We as a people have dignity, and because of that, we have to defend our culture, and we want to be treated like anybody else, regardless of what language you speak, regardless of what God we pray to. That's something that we're people like everyone else. This is a human rights issue, not just an issue of one culture versus the next.
We're running out of time, unfortunately, but do you think this is a human rights issue? Do you think that Americans are now forcing these people to lose their culture?
Right. I wouldn't put the impetus on the immigrant. What I would say is the level of immigration is so large, it's more of a transformation. And what I would say to your guest and anyone else is that a nation, by very definition, has to enforce its borders because that's what sovereignty is. So at some point, we need to start reinforcing this law.
Well, border security is something that even Barack Obama said today isn't quite going to be enough, so we'll see what does end up coming with immigration. Thank you both, gentlemen.